Welcome to my camera room. It's a real privilege for me to be here at the request of Essential Photo to share my passion with you and discuss how I'm going to create a beauty portrait. Now for this image I'm going to throw aside my normal favoured equipment, my flash equipment, and I'm going to do it with continual LED lighting. So a difference for me and something exciting for us both to share. So really what I need to do is to introduce you to the specifics of the equipment that I'm going to use today. For those that follow the photographic edutainment that I put out, it's no surprise that I'm using glow pads because we've been using them to video for quite some time now. And it's using them as video lights that swayed my opinion way back over to the positive side about their usefulness for being able to take stills pictures as well. One of the things that's key critical that we need to understand is continuous light, by their very nature of being continuous, are never quite as powerful as the emittance of a flash. So that means that we end up having to sacrifice ISO or bump up the ISO so we can have a full range of apertures and shutter combinations that we may want to create with. Now today's cameras are more than capable of having the ISO ridden up, so it's really not much of an issue to talk about, but it was worth mentioning because that's basically the difference between continuous lights, lights that are here all the time and you see them on and you see the subject under them, and flashlight which only has a blip of high intensity, high powered light when it's triggered. Now today I've got two glow pads with me. I've got the larger rounder glow pad, the 450D, and the smaller rectangular glow pad, the 350D, and I'm going to create a beauty portrait inspired by the fact that they are bicolour devices. Now by mentioning that the bicolour devices, what I actually mean is I can adjust the warmth of the light by degrees Kelvin from a very warm tungsten light to a very cool, crisp, almost acidic light, passing all the way through daylight balanced. So it's the feature of the light that I'm going to make the key point in what I'm shooting today, because that way we're getting the most out of the units. Now as I've mentioned, I've two glow pads, and the eagle-eyed among you will notice that there's actually a flash sat with me, which is my preferred flash, which is the City 300 Pro. Now I'm using this not as a flash, but this also has a bicolour modelling lamp built in, and I'm going to use that feature as a third light. I've fitted the unit with its native connection barn door set. That just means I don't need an adjustment bracket. It fits direct to the unit, and those that are eagle-eyed will notice that I've fitted it with a gel holder, and in this gel I've got a little green gel, and this is going to be my background light. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that modelling lamp to add colour to the scoop behind me, to add more depth and more narrative into the picture. Now one of the big secrets about shooting something is where we start, and we need to start with good narrative. So yes, I'm shooting a beauty portrait, but I'm going to make it an alien warrior princess inspired portrait, and that's going to help me decide where I'm going to put the lights and what I'm going to do with them. So before I explain the role of each light, let's invite our subject onto the set. And as I say, when you're shooting with a reason, with a narrative, with a story makes things easier. And I've got to say, having such a great model and makeup artist as Lily Von Pink today is going to make my job much, much easier. So thank you very much for putting the effort into the look. And now I have to match her effort by making the lights do exactly what I need them to do to tell the story of our alien warrior princess. Before we get down to the nitty-gritty of placing the lights, we need to understand the inherent difference between using flash and using continuous light. And the biggest difference is with flash, there's a plethora of modifiers to be able to change the way the light hits the subject, its size, its shape, its contrast. With the glow pads have a quality of light that we have to change by position and direction mainly. Now I want to feature the biggest property, the biggest plus that these lights have, which is the bi-directional colour in my picture. That's going to be the core of what we're doing. And the placement of the light and the positioning of the light, I just have to think about it slightly differently than I would do my approach if I was using flash. But it's that change that's refreshing, and it's that change that's exciting, and it's that change that is going to produce a different picture than our normal work, because we have to think round the quality of that light. Don't turn the channel off, there's not a technical error. The best way to show you what the glow pads are doing for me is to start from a place where there's no light and then introduce the light, place the light and show you what it's doing. Now you can already see that this 350D, for such a tiny unit, has got an amazing cast of light. It's got a huge, wide, soft, beautiful amount of light. Now I need to control it to produce the picture that I want to. Now in this image I want the 350D, which as you can see we've got running on batteries. It's untethered at the moment. We've got it absolutely footloose and fancy free, which is a great feature of these lights. You don't need to plug them into the wall. This is going to be my accent light. This is going to have separation on Lily. It's going to show cheekbones, jawline, shoulder, clavicle, bust line. It's going to make a backlit shape that is going to complement the very cool light that the key light's going to produce, because this light is going to go from being white to being a beautiful, rich, warm tungsten for me. And as you can see, it's adding warmth into the picture now. Now, ultimately, I don't want too much light spilling onto the back wall of the scoop. So if that's the case, I'm probably going to end up flagging it. But we'll see as we go down the road if that's the right thing for me to do. What is important is that I don't want that light to hit Lily's nose. The other thing that's important is I want to swing the light I'm not using, the waste light, towards the background or into a flag, because what I don't want to do is push it forward and have it bounce back from the reflector. So it is all about control. So there we go, it's in probably just the right place for me now, and I can worry about the power of it later. Now, just to show you, if I don't want to have all this back area lit, the simple thing for me to do is to put a flag in and take away that excess light. So the control comes from flagging. Now obviously I'd have to ensure that the flag and the light were in the right position so it's not encroaching on my crop, but that is what the 350D is going to do for me. It's going to add this lovely warm rim light to add to the three-dimensional quality of the picture. So just before we go on to the next light, we'll take a still and you can see what the camera's seeing. Now I've got an 80mm lens on an APS-C size sensor, which is 120mm on 35mm film terms, and I'm using such a long lens for its compression of perspective. So drop the picture in now and you can see what it's seeing. Right, so out of the gloom we're going to have light too. And just remember, this is the City 300 Pro, which I know is a flash, but we've got it working just with the modelling light and the green gel. And this is how it looks to the naked eye, and then we'll drop another frame in so you can see exactly what the camera is seeing. Now don't forget, the camera is set on aperture priority. I'm shooting on f2.8 and it's giving me a shutter speed of around a 450th of a second, depending on which areas of the frame that I've got caught into it. I'm shooting at ISO 2000. So let's see what our backlight gives us. All being well, it'll give us a lovely green Borg type wash on the wall, and it won't throw too much light back towards Lily. So you've now seen that the background light is giving us a nice silhouette of Lily and just that icky sicky green in the background. So we've looked at the 350D in its role as an accent. We've looked at the City 300 Pro in its role as a backlight. So now we have to talk about the units that are doing the real heavy lifting in the picture. And that's the 450D, which we're using as the key light, and this ultra efficient U-shaped beauty reflector that we're actually using as our fill light in the picture, and we'll show you the difference as best as we can that makes. One of the great features of the glow pads is how soft and how much wrap and the size of the light cast you get from such a small unit. Now that in itself is an amazing feature, but for our image we want to create more contrast. Now by moving the light nearer to Lily and shortening that distance, we increase the intensity, we increase the contrast, and that's when we'll need to bring in that highly efficient U-shaped reflector to control the contrast to a level that I want it to be within the image. Now the easiest way to show you how efficient that reflector is and the job that reflector does is if we take two pictures, one with just the key light and no reflector, and then we'll put the reflector in and you can see the amazing job that it does. As you can see, we've taken the reflector away, and you can see that for such a small lighting unit, how soft, how wrapping, how unctuous the light is that's cast from it. So that's great, it's a great feature of the unit, but for me, I want more contrast in the picture, and the way to do that is to bring that unit nearer to Lily. And the best way to show you how it works is by removing the reflector as we have done and bringing that key light roughly into the position it will be when we take the picture with the reflector in as well. And I'll show you that how by treating it like I would do an umbrella on a beauty shoot and tabletopping the light, we're going to get the form, the shape and the contrast that I want to sculpt out these amazing cheekbones. So even moving the light this close, you can still see that for its size, it's an incredibly soft light source. So what we will be doing is I'll be moving the light much closer, and I'm looking for a butterfly light pattern. Little shadow under the nose, great carving of cheekbones. It's a beautiful, beautiful light to use for a beauty shot. But I mentioned I'm going to tabletop the light, which means that what I'm going to do is I'm going to cant the light down till it's virtually, well, it is flat, and use this edge of the light as the key light. This part of the light will fall into the reflector and it will become my fill light. But if I get that into position now and I raise it to where I need it to be for the nose shadow, you can see just how crisp and what a great shape and great form that the key light gives. But you'll also see just how much we require the use of a reflector to control the density of shadow under the chin. It's vitally important at this stage not to underplay the role of the reflector. The reflector is really an important part of this picture, and although under ideal world conditions I'd prefer the reflector to be another light for ultimate control, in this instance it isn't here. So the reflector can give me a massive degree of control, almost as much as a separate light unit, but much cheaper in delivering that quality. Because don't forget, I can affect its height and its pitch to be able to push back just the right amount of light into the subject. Let me show you. The reflector plays a really vital role in our picture, because what it does is it takes some of the light from the key, the waste light you might say, and it uses it, it recycles it, it takes it into itself and then bounces it back towards the subject. But because that light is travelling a greater distance than the edge of the light that's striking Lily, the inverse square law says it's never going to be as powerful as the main part of the light that goes directly on the face, because it's travelling a greater distance. So it's a wonderful and easy way of filling the shadows without having to worry about ratio and putting the right power into another lighting unit. Now in this instance, I can still control the volume of light by the height and the angle that we present the reflector towards Lily. So it still gives me a great amount of control, so I can be as creative as I wish to be. So now you can see exactly what I was talking about, offering the key light. So this edge is lighting Lily, giving me the shape and the form and the contrast, and the bulk of it is sitting into the trough of the reflector, and that's being bounced back. But because it's travelling a greater distance than the light that's striking her directly, the inverse square law is our friend again, and it helps us because it tells us that the power will never be as strong as that main section of the light that strikes her without travelling that distance. For those that really want to know, if you double the distance between light and subject, you reduce the power by a factor of 4. For those that aren't really interested in the technicalities, just know that a reflector will never ever be as bright as the key light that strikes. But I can still control exactly the amount of contrast in the picture by how I offer the light or the reflector to Lily's face. And if we just change the pitch of it, you'll be able to see that we can increase contrast and decrease contrast just by the amount of light we're allowing to reflect back. So all that remains now is to turn on both my effects lights, the accent light and the background light, and in conjunction with the key light and my reflector, I've got everything I need to create beautiful pictures. So now, rather than worrying about the light, all I've got to worry about is directing the subject and capturing those frames that are going to make great pictures. So now all I have to concentrate on is directing the subject. And there we have the power, chin down a little bit, of shooting with continuous light, in the fact that we can see what's happening. We can build the light. Just turn your head away from me. So we've gone into a broad little loop pattern. Head back to me, fraction, that's it. And eyes to me. Lots of attitude, lots of interest. What a great shot. So there you have it. You can see that we were really in the zone. Being able to see the light enabled us to just manipulate the pose and change Lily. It was especially useful for seeing how the 350D distributed its warm light. So for me, it's a big thumbs up to use the continuous lighting for this style of beauty photography. It's easy to set up. You either use it plugged into the wall or with the batteries, and you can see exactly the effect that you're going to get. Now, a little tip is don't forget to adjust the in-camera white balance. As you can see, you can get some really creative looks that way.